Iceland.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Okay. This is okay. In all honesty, I think this is a loaded question, and making look America weak by bowing to an emperor or out of respect, and I think I think the question should come down to what is the consensus in the international arena before George W. Bush and after George W. Bush, and I think I think Obama has changed the tone of how the dialogue should occur. And it has to be multilateral. I think that's the important thing that he has set so far. And the other thing is, with respect to Iran, this is how I feel. If you basically exhaust all options before you go to the military options, you have much more credibility when you go to the military options, ultimately. So when you exhaust diplomacy, when you go through the UN, when you exhaust sanctions and nothing works, that's when you move to the diplomacy. And even Henry Kissinger, very pragmatist under a Republican, he agrees with this policy. This is how it's supposed to work. You have to basically draw a carrot and stick strategy. If it doesn't work, then you do the military strategy. You can't just jump into a military strategy and not expect repercussions in terms of backlash in the Middle East and other areas. And the other thing is, with the Bush administration, our relationship with Russia was very, very cold. It was extremely weak. Bush looked into Putin's eyes and he said, you know, I looked into his soul and I think he's a great guy. And it turned out it was not so, you know. So with Medvedev, Obama is really trying to restart the relationship, basically make sure that the nuclear proliferation agreements go through. And a lot of people call that, he has his brain in the sky, but it's a noble goal, and that's why he won the Nobel Prize. Is to basically have a commitment to reduce the nuclear weapons, and I think that's a good thing.
I don't, the way Obama's foreign policy is working, and he's making apologies to all these nations for what Bush had done, I think it's just a sense of empty rhetoric that Obama is giving out. I think in the long run, in the broad spectrum, in the grand scheme of things, it really doesn't matter what Obama does, and I actually think he's just wasting his time apologizing to all these other nations. I think the fact of the matter is that we actually do have an American empire, and Obama has done nothing to reduce the sort of idea of the American empire. And I think when it comes down to it, you can apologize all you want to all of these nations, but if you don't make this clear cut in your actions, then you're never going to make those apologies mean anything in the long run. So like, it's not saying this idea of exception. We're not like talking about this idea of exceptionalism. We don't have American exceptionalism. I think it's just good policy to not have this empire and overstretch our resources. And I might sound a little more like Michael Moore at this point, but I mean, I will never support Hugo Chavez. I'll just make that clear. But I think that. I think what we need to do is we have to start pulling back resources in other countries. I think we need to start getting our military bases. And you know, I'm not saying that we should get rid of our military bases in the Middle East and areas that are highly unstable and that we still have interest within those areas. But I think there are areas in Europe and all around the world that we have bases in, and we haven't done anything to actually eliminate those bases or start pulling back our resources and start refocusing back on domestic policies. And I think it's once we do that, once we start focusing on this idea of third way and like intervention in these other areas, I think that's the only way that these apologies that Obama has been making around the world will actually mean anything. So until then, I think these apologies are unnecessary. It's a waste of time, and Obama should even bother making these speeches in the first place.
The final question for the foreign policy segment will be: Did Attorney General Eric Holder make the right decision to try Khalid Sheikh Mohammed in a civil court?
Yes, he did. I think it's a good decision. Two reasons. I think when it compared to the previous administration, this administration has given a lot more importance to civil liberties. And we can't forget that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed planned 9/11, and he executed it in New York. So it's only right that he's tried in New York in a civilian court. So it's not that he is fighting a war against us. It's a war against terrorism, but that term itself frightens me, because you can't really win a war against terrorism, because terrorism is a tactic. It's not, you're not fighting a country with armies. So there's a gray area where the Bush administration sort of blurred and muddied it out. And I think one of the most egregious things the previous administration did was the Military Commissions Act of 2006. It basically eliminated what's called habeas corpus, the right of anyone to basically stand trial. And we have a constitution. I mean, the most American thing that we can do is uphold our constitution. And basically say that we're going to put him on trial. I mean, New Yorkers, every single New Yorker is saying, you know, bring it on. Bring this guy on to trial. You know, what are we so afraid of? I think the Republicans are afraid of bringing this guy on trial. What do they have to be afraid of? I think confidence in the American justice system sends a message. It sends a strong message that no matter what egregious act this guy committed, we will still uphold him to the same standards of a guy who, you know, stole from a corner grocery store. And we will give them the same rights, and we'll make sure they're brought to justice. And it sends a strong message for those who think that America is the evil empire. It's not. We have a system of checks and balances. We have a system of justice that works. And we have convicted over 200 terrorists in the past decade, right from the shoe bomber to, you know, the Oklahoma bomber Timothy McVeigh. So we have done a lot of convictions of terrorists. And in fact, the only convictions done by a military tribunal, there were only 2 terrorists convicted in a military tribunal, and both of them were released a year later. So military tribunals don't work. They don't have enough requirements for a trial. I think a civilian tribunal that is much more effective and statistically in bringing these people to justice.
So I actually think that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed should be given his, due process. I think he should be given rights to a trial. However, I don't think he should be given the same rights as a citizen in the same kind of due process. He's not a citizen of the United States. He has no rights, and I think people are pretty surprised that I haven't brought the Constitution in yet, me being a libertarian. But I think that we have to stick to the Constitution in this particular sense. That we should not give him the rights of a citizen when actually trying him for the stuff that he's done, that he did in 9/11. He's considered an enemy combatant. And I think the only way to establish rights is not through giving him rights that every single American in the United States enjoys. I think that people should give him that military tribunal, but the Congress should pass stricter standards on the military tribunals and giving him his fair process and his fair trial and due process. I think if you do this, if you allow him to go through a civilian court, I think you're sending a message that, you know, we're giving someone who attacked the freedoms of America, and we're giving him the same rights as everyone else. That, you know, he committed these acts, and while he may not be guilty, he committed these acts, and we're essentially giving him his due process in that particular sense. So I think that I think it's important that we do give him those rights, and I think the Congress should pass these laws to make a fair trial through military tribunals, but I don't think he should be going through a civilian court and getting the same rights as every single American citizen.
Attorney General Eric Holder has a lot of things going for him. He's very smart, he's a good lawyer, and he's got an excellent mustache. Other than that, I can't really find much else. I think he made one of the worst decisions an Attorney General could possibly make in this decision. I think he's endangered American citizens. You're talking about military tribunals and the attack of September 11th that happened in New York, but it also didn't just happen in New York, it also happened in Washington, D.C., and it also happened in Pennsylvania. And this act was not conspired by Khalid Sheikh Mohammed in the United States, it was conspired in another country, in Afghanistan, where the Taliban and Al-Qaeda was. So, number one, he's not an American, he did not commit this crime in America, he deserves none of the rights, he's a war criminal. Send him down to Guantanamo. Let's waterboard him some more, frankly.
Yeah.
Get what else we can get out of him. And talking about the war against terror, whether it's a tactic or not, let's just change the name then. Let's not call it overseas contingencies like the Obama administration has called it. Let's call it war against terrorist organizations. How about? And we're in war against terrorist organizations, and we do not bring war criminals into trial in the United States. And the idea that somehow we're moving past tribunals now by bringing Khalid Sheikh Mohammed into the United States is wrong, because we still have the process of military tribunals. The same day that he announced, that Mr. Holder announced that Mohammed was going to be tried in New York City, he also announced that other terrorists were going to be tried in military tribunals. So the military tribunals still exist, and who better to try in that context than the mastermind of 9/11, a man who's mostly responsible for killing 3,000 Americans' lives. It's hard for me to stay very very nice about this because I'm just so mad about this decision.